Hard Life. Shavonne Robbins and John Pace, who were both sentenced to life as juveniles, will share their story of how they ended up incarcerated and offer solutions to violence. This conversation is brought to you by WURD Radio's Violence Reporting Collaborative, where we're amplifying the public's voice on violence and seeking responses and solutions to social problems. Good morning, John and Shavonne, and welcome to Wake Up With WURD.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So let's start with you, Shavonne, because I met John before, and it's my first time meeting you. Tell me your story.
Well, when I was 16 years old, I got caught up in some trouble with some friends of mine. We went to a house to rob somebody, and somebody ended up losing their life.
Mm-hmm. What were the circumstances that led you to participate in that action?
One of my cousins, came and got me and asked me, told me that somebody had assaulted her and she wanted us to come around there and take care of it. So that's how we ended there.
And you were 16?
Yes.
What was the first time that you kind of saw or participated in an act of violence, or the first time you kind of seen that in your community?
I'm from South Philly. I see it all the time.
So, John, same question to you. I mean, what were the circumstances that kind of, set the path for your life?
I was 17 years old when, unfortunately, my situation occurred. And obviously, I could see myself leading in that direction. At the time, I couldn't see it, but I was leading in that direction. And I think more than anything, mine was associated with identity issues, trying to be a part of what I thought was cool.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot
so
of
peer
that,
pressure.
And yes, and a lot of that involved, violence.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a guy, Elijah Anderson, wrote Code of the Street, and he gives a good narrative about how this perception of being mean and nasty is more respected in the community, particularly in our communities, than anything. And I think when I look at that and I think about that, I was a part of that culture.
So, I mean, I want to dive deeper into that, but I want to also talk about the way you were raised, I guess the pedigree. I have to assume you weren't raised to participate in the types of things you ended up in?
Yeah. No, I grew up I got a big family. My
Okay.
mother had 11 children, so I was like close to the baby. And so my mother, trying to work to take care of all of us, I think she just didn't have the time to really be able to monitor all of our behaviors. So oftentimes when I came home from school, she wasn't there. And so that allowed me to roam back out into the streets and starting to develop, I think, a lot of those negative habits or bad habits from that culture.
Shavonne, if I can ask you the same question about your family. What your family structure was like in terms of how you were raised?
Well, they didn't raise me to be like that, but I just did my own thing. Like, the people I hung with was into a lot of things, so I became a product of my environment.
Mm-hmm. I understand now, like, you are talking to people. You go to schools and kind of tell your story. Why do you feel it's important to share your story? I mean, even coming here today, why do you feel it was important to do?
I just feel like I'm the best person to tell you because I lived it.
Mm-hmm.
I was in prison for almost 26 years. Can't nobody tell a story. Can't nobody tell a story better than I can.
Mm-hmm. How old were you when you went to prison?
I was 16.
So, like, immediately after that act?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you remember any of the thoughts in your mind, either prior to prison or post? Well, I guess more specifically, were there any regrets, or were you kind of just in a space of indifference?
Yeah, I'm going to keep it all the way real. At the beginning, there wasn't really no regrets because I'm still young.
Okay.
And I'm still trying to adjust, but once the years pass, I think once you get there and you get over, when you first get there, you go through a trying to adjust thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you still rebellious. You still don't want to listen to authority because you didn't when you was home. But after you get that 10 years under your belt, you started to see that things is real, and then that's when you started, going to school and doing the right things. You got two choices. You can make your time easy or hard. And at the beginning, I made mine hard, but then I relaxed and I made it easy.
It's 8:11. If you're just joining us, you're listening to Wake Up the Word, and we're talking with Shavonne Robbins and John Pace, who were both sentenced to life as juveniles. They've been gracious enough to join us this morning to share their story of how they ended up incarcerated and hopefully offer us some concrete solutions to violence. John, I'd like to ask you the same question. When you got into prison, what were you thinking and kind of post-prison? I mean, did you ever experience any regret, or was there a level of indifference at first?
unlike Shavonne, I actually took responsibility very early.
Okay.
And I started to evaluate, when I was very remorseful about what happened.
Okay.
And so I started to think, well, why did I make some of the bad decisions that I made? And so, when I seen my mom, when she came to the police station, just me and her just started breaking down crying, particularly, the thought that I was responsible for someone's life. And so I think my process started at that time, just thinking about, why did I put myself in this situation, in the people that I was hurting as a result of my decision. And so I started the process very early, and I was committed to actually, going to school, working on trying to get a college degree and stuff. So I started the process early. And so that makes me think like, okay, well, the question was, how did I get caught up? So
right.
I started that process thinking about that when I went into prison.
Okay.
And so my
almost on like day one.
Yes, it was with me. But how do I get there? That was the question. And what direction did I want to go? I think I didn't have those answers because I was still young, searching for an identity until I began to latch up with individuals who had already gone through that process. Then I began to better understand, okay, there's a path for me.
Do you have those answers now of how you ended up there?
Oh, definitely. I think
so disclose.
Yeah, I think when I said early about identity, a lot of it has to do with in our particular environments, our culture, we don't have an identity. And I think this is a history with black folks in general. I think we search for an identity. And unfortunately, I think a lot of us, and during my particular time, and we can go way back, I think we talk about what's called Man, Child, and Promised Land. We read these different books. Malcolm X talks about. I think there's a long history of us searching for identity, and I was, just a product of that as well. And so, and I realized a lot of it had to do with socio-economic conditions that helped breed some of the negative behavior. Just I didn't have identity and became a part of those negative environmental elements.
Negative behavior. I mean, that word negative, positive. It could be subjective, right? I mean, when you were in the middle of these experiences as a teenager, did you understand positive and negative behavior? Did you understand that Shavonne, you're shaking your head no. So I'll let you answer.
When I was coming up, when I was younger, I can't tell you one positive thing I did. Like, I just feel like, and then you learn about positive and negativity. Once you get caught up, then you notice the difference. And you know the difference in that energy, whether you being positive or you being negative. But I think it comes to that we just try to fit in with the people that we hanging with, and we don't know who we are at that time. So
you agree with John that it was an identity thing. You were trying to figure out who you were. Did you find out who you were when you were incarcerated?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about who you are now.
Well, right now I'm just somebody that trying to get back into the swing of things in life because I missed half my life. Like I spent my whole adult. It might sound crazy, but you end up being in there for so long when you're young that you really get raised by strangers. So you gotta come back out here and try to adjust to life. But now I just feel like I'm trying to do whatever I can to give back and share my experience.
What's been the biggest challenge for you in readjusting to society?
Finding my way around.
Do you feel as if there are enough support systems either from the government and or family?
The who? The
Do you feel like there's enough support systems or services presented by government for people in your circumstances?
I mean, I think if you seek them, you can find them. I think it is a lot of people out here trying to help us. Me personally, I know I got a lot of support. But I just feel like some of the stories you used to hear about, being, parole and I just feel like them situations is what you make it. Because I haven't had but I'm just speaking for me, because somebody else's story might be different. But for me, I don't feel like I had a hard time since I've been home. I feel like I got a lot of support, but we also had a lot of support before we came out.
Okay.
So the people that we leaning on now is like people that was riding with us while we was in there. It's not no new people. It's like the people that been there. Like YSRP and stuff. People that been
YSRP.
Yeah.
What's that?
Youth Sense and Reentry Project.
Okay.
Like they was there. They always been there helping us.
Okay.
And fighting for our cause and trying to get the juveniles to come home.
Yeah. When did you find out, John, and then I'll ask you the same question, Shavonne, and then I'll open it up to Melissa and Ike for questions. When did you find out you were coming home? And how'd you feel?
Part of my background is paralegal, and so I follow the law. And so a number of years I've been, and actually I used to communicate with Shavonne at Muncie, because we wanted to tell our narratives so that we can create, a better understanding with people about who we were as young people and making poor decisions. So I was following the law, and so I had a sense of where the courts were going. When they made a decision in 2005 in one case, then 2010 they came around with another case, and then subsequently in 2012. So I was following the law and I understood it. So I ultimately knew that it was going to happen at some point in time. And so in preparation for that, I was just focusing on how do I prepare myself for this opportunity once the opportunity presented itself. And so
Did you feel like you deserved to be let out? I mean, or was there ever a point in this process where you felt like I deserve to be here, and if I am here for the rest of my life, then that's fair?
I forgave myself a long time ago. When I took responsibility for my actions and I started to move towards making better decisions, I forgave myself a long time ago. And so I did think that I was deserving of this because I thought that I had something to contribute to society.
And that's what you're referring to as this self versus self, or man versus man dilemma we have in society, where you kind of had to come to terms with who you were and who you want to be, right? Shavonne, did you have a similar experience where you forgave yourself?
Yeah, I forgave myself a long time ago, but you still have to go through life knowing that you were responsible for somebody else living life. That's something that can't be missed in a situation. You always got to bring that up, that you getting it, and sometimes you don't want to be. You just want to just let your actions speak and try to get back, but you don't want to. You don't want to forget that we still living life, but the other person that they, so you always want to remember that. But at the same time, you want to forgive yourself, because I forgave myself also. Okay. And I do feel like I'm deserving of a second chance. I feel like I gave 26 years of my life, and now I feel like, I can add to society and I can do great things for the youth and whatever.
Absolutely. Ike?
I just wanted to, first of all, thank both of you for coming in this morning. I just wanted to ask, when you coming out of prison, I'm quite sure you hear a lot of people say, well, if they did it once, they'll do it again. Why should we let them out? They had life, keep them in jail. Do you guys feel like there's more pressure on you being out here to not do nothing wrong? Because, a lot of people might be looking at you. As soon as you do, it could be just probably a parking ticket or something. Somebody will blow it up. I told you shouldn't let them out. How do you feel like, as far as the pressure, not feel as though you want to let somebody down or let yourself down as well? Yeah,
I would say to that, I pretty much stayed out of trouble while incarcerated. So I don't think about that, because I think I've been on a path, this path for a long time. And so I've been placing myself into spaces that allow me, I think, to do constructive things. And so that's not really a thought of mine, but as a whole, I do look at that. Right. Because I understand, we had a case in 1991, Reggie McFadden. He actually, people probably didn't know he was a juvenile, but he got his sentence commuted. And he went out and went to New York, and he killed 2 women and raped one. And so that's something that I'm always mindful of. And so as a group, I understand that, and I think we have a responsibility to one another. So when Shavonne came out, we had a space for Shavonne to come to. So we have a meeting once a month that we can be able to consult with one another and share what we're going through. And so I think about it as a group, but on a personal level, I think I've taken responsibility for myself, and I've tried to put myself in spaces where I can be responsible.
Right. Shavonne, do you want to answer that?
I agree with what John said. Yes, you do. I ain't gonna lie. Sometimes I do be like, oh man, I hope don't nobody mess up, because I know that they're gonna look at us differently. We not gonna get judged like the regular parole violator. Right. Let's be honest.
Right. Absolutely.
It's gonna be a bigger thing with us. So yeah, I think about it. But also, I cleaned my act up in prison. I ain't been in trouble for a long time. That's why it was, easy for me to get the 25 to life deal, because I have been carrying myself well in prison. So I don't think about me getting in trouble. But after being around, people that had been released as juvenile, like me, Paulette, John, and all the other brothers, that when we go to the meeting once a month, I see that, it's so much positive energy, and I can't see none of them messing up. I think we all are aware of the consequences, and I think that we all know that we living for the rest of the people that's still in there struggling.
It's 8:21. We got to take a quick break, Melissa. When we come back, I'll let you ask some questions, join the conversation. And if you have any questions and want to participate in this conversation, the phone lines are open: 215-634-8065 or toll free 1-866-361-0900, or you can follow me on Twitter. I'll do my best to read your thoughts on the air. It's 8:22. You're listening to Wake Up With WURD. I'm Flood the Drummer, your guest host, in studio with Ike Raw, community liaison for WURD Radio's Violence Reporting Project, and Melissa Robbins, political strategist. We'll be right back. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Wake Up With WURD. It's 8:28. Coming up at 9, an eye on education. Former school reform commissioner Sylvia Sims responds to the name of those appointed to the school board nominating committee. Plus, WURD Radio listeners will be given a chance to suggest the names of those who should be considered for the governing body. But first, we turn back to hard life. Shavonne Robbins and John Pace, who were both sentenced to life as juveniles, were joining us today to share how they ended up incarcerated and offer solutions to violence. So I want to get to the solutions part. John, let's start with you. Oh, no, Melissa, I'm sorry, you did. You have a question. I apologize. Melissa Robbins, political strategist. Welcome to the show. Welcome back.
So I have two questions, both for Shavonne and John. One, what would you say to the teen right now who's at that point in their life where they're either going to go down the right road or the wrong road, and they're pressed with that decision? What would you say to that person right now to keep them out of harm's way and keep them from throwing their lives away? And the second question is, when you guys do face that person or that issue on the street, because it will come to you, what tools do you have in your shed to deal with any kind of controversy or animosity that comes your way? How will you deal with that? Because it will come. Shavonne first.
Okay. Well, to the young kid, what I would say, because this is where I think I made my mistakes at. I think that it's very important to, be active in school and after school programs. Because I believe if I would have did that, stay active, like everybody used to always say, go to school, and I just feel like if you, fill your day with positive energy, like such as school, after school programs, get active in a lot of things, I feel like you don't have enough time for the streets. 'Cause I feel like the streets is what get you caught up and make you go down the wrong road, and choose your people, places, and things wisely, because that also, send you down the wrong road.
So, this is I would say not necessarily a difficult question, because, you're talking to young people who's probably bombarded with so many issues, and you're telling them at that moment, just do the right thing. And it's a little bit more challenging than that. But one of the things I know when I think about myself and what could have been a factor was learning to be comfortable with yourself. I think too often we're not comfortable with ourselves. We're trying to appease others. And I think that you have to get comfortable with yourself and not worry about what other people think, because ultimately when you're following someone else, I think we've seen where that leads at, trying to please other people. And I think that there are actually there's a long history of you following that direction. And so I think be aware of that and making those decisions, those hash decisions, in making those decisions, that there could be consequences to that. Mm-hmm. And so, get comfortable with your decision. I often think about, I remember there was young guys that, when I was growing up, and, I remember this particular guy, I used to always take his glasses at the time. Gazelles were very popular. And I remember, and he used to work in a grocery store. Mm-hmm. He was comfortable in working in a grocery store and to be able to buy it. But I'm sitting here trying to take his glasses because I didn't want to work for mine. Mm-hmm. But I just think about, when I think about him, that he was comfortable with himself. Mm. And I'm quite sure he's successful now, because he didn't try to follow us and do the things that we were doing.
Okay, so for the second part of that question, how will you face any kind of controversy or animosity when it comes your way?
Oh, well, I know how to deal with that, I'm going to deal with it accordingly. It's according to what kind of controversy. But I'm not going to never, put myself in a situation that I have to be violent. And I don't want nobody to be violent with me. Mm-hmm. So, I know how to communicate, real well. And, and get understanding of situations. I think back then I used to just jump off the handle. I think now I handle stuff very well. Like even when I'm in Center City, people be bumping me, knocking me all over. Now, everybody's in a rush. People be knocking me down, bumping onto me, and I learn how to just be humble.
Conflict resolution.
Yeah.
And you, John?
So is that question for today? How am I today, and how do I handle those situations?
No, absolutely. Right here, since you've assimilated back into society, how will you handle conflict resolution?
Okay, well, to me, I think I have grown tremendously that I don't let little things like that get to me. And a part of that has to do with emotional intelligence, that sometimes we get caught up in little scenarios that we think that we have to defend ourselves, and we don't have to. Sometimes you can just allow those things just to blow over, and as they blow over, what happens is eventually, it's not an issue no more. And I think that's a big issue, that we don't have certain level of emotional intelligence that we can't see through that moment, But I think when we're thinking through it, or we just let time pass, oftentimes it's blow over and we have a different perspective about it.
So I want to get to the solutions part. We had over 300 murders, homicides in the city of Philadelphia. I think 317 is where we ended up at last year. The main solution people are talking about is adding more police to the streets. Others are saying add that money to grassroots organizations who could be violent interrupters, those who can be on the street, who have relationships with those who may be able to commit that violence, who could be that first line of defense, who have an ear to the ground, who know what beefs are stemming on social media and can help mitigate it before it comes to surface. And so I just wonder, you two, as Philadelphians, how do you think about this moment in terms of solutions? How do we quell the violence? Shavonne, I'll start with you.
Well, you said something about adding more police to the street.
Say it.
With the stuff you see, on Facebook and all that about the police, it seems like they adding violence to the street. But the solution is that we have to have more people, feet on the ground, or more. I think more people such as us, like peers,
right. Mm-hmm.
And such as y'all guys out there, just talking to people, letting them know that we can't stand up and complain about what the police doing to black and brown people when we killing each other. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So,
John?
we gotta be more active.
I understand clearly that this is a very complex issue, and it's not easy, because I think, as I said earlier, that young people are dealing with, a lot of peer pressure. But so I often think about what would have worked for me, and I think I needed someone to interrupt. You use
that violence interrupter.
Yes, I remember there's one out in Chicago, interrupters, and we need that. We need to go into this space with young people and be able to provide them with alternatives. And so what are they thinking about? Why are you thinking this particular way? And I think we need to be able to get into that space to help them to be able to solve some of the challenging questions or things that are going through their lives at those particular moments. And so I think, to me, how do we, and particularly because me and Shavonne and a number of us that are coming out here, and not just us that were juvenile lifers, but any of us who have gone through similar life experiences, I think we can lend to them what our experiences was and how we were unable to handle those situations at that particular time, but how we better understand it today. I think they would probably be more inclined to listen to us, and I've seen that already because we've been in a number of spaces where we've talked to young people and we've told them about our story, and their eyes are wide open, because they want to hear about that. They couldn't believe the fact that you can be 15, 14, 13 years old and get life without the possibility of parole. And so they're willing to listen to these stories. Me and Joanne are going to go to the workshop school after this. These are young people. They invited us to their school, and they wanted to learn about mass incarceration. They're going to give up a presentation about some solutions to mass incarceration. So whenever we can find ourselves in that space and being able to help support them and some of the things they're doing, I think we need to be doing that.
Absolutely. Joanne Bennett is a fourth-year PhD student who has accompanied John Pace today. He's a fourth-year PhD student in the criminology department at Temple University. And I just wanted you to speak to this idea of a violence interrupter from a criminology standpoint, from a scientific, qualitative, and quantitative standpoint.
Oh yeah, well I think the violence interrupter is the cure violence method, and the cure violence method is very prolific because it doesn't see violence as a criminal justice issue, but more as a public health issue. And if we adjust violence as a public health issue, then you have to have some of the virus to kind of cure the cure. And I think that's the whole purpose of the violence interruption. Individuals who have perpetrated violence now they can see others who may perpetrate violence, and also I think Ike, to your point about being the community liaison for violence, individuals have their pulse on the community. Like me being a criminologist, like even though I'm a black man and I'm from South Philly and I like my chicken wings fried hard, just like you said, sometimes we don't have a pulse on the community. So the individuals who have these relationships and have a little bit more pull, and I think that's what the leverage is, right? Individuals who respect these members in the community and say, hey man, you don't have to do that. And like John said, it gives them an identity, because if they see John not doing or Ike not doing, they say, well, the old heads set the precedence of what's cool. See, Obama called them mentors. I just call them old heads.
Ike, do you want to weigh in?
I just wanted to say, as far as anybody who's listening, like just listening to their stories and how they do want to give back to the community, because they know you have a lot of children out here, especially in South Philadelphia, where they're killing each other. They kids. Like, and for them to sit up here and let you know, you can have them set up a program where they can mentor the youth, where they can tell them, because they've been there. They know what it's going to lead to, so they could talk to the youth and let them know what it's going to lead to. Like, they hear they're willing to do it. So let's have a platform or somewhere where they can go build a program where they could talk to the youth, mentor the youth, because I think that would really help. If you hear somebody you got a lot of kids out here who think it's cool to be in jail. They think it's cool to shoot somebody. They want to get a tattoo, teardrop under the eye and all that. They think it's cute. It's not. So when you have people here who've been through that, 25 years in jail, 20 plus years in prison, like I'm saying, they've been there, they know that. So let's just, for anybody who's listening, any legislators, anybody in the city, in the state, if you can make a program where you have mentors, people like that coming out, let's do it.
Melissa, I want to give you 60 seconds to ask the last question, and then I'm going to give Shavonne and John last words.
And just to piggyback on what Ike is saying, absolutely. We know that our communities are starved of resources, right? So we know that there are a lot of contributing factors. We know that it's easier for a child in our neighborhood to get access to a gun before they can get a book or a fresh piece of fruit, right? We know that we live in food deserts. We know that guns are plentiful. So when all of these things are upon you, yeah, it's easy to make a choice to pick up a gun and commit a violent act, because either you don't have food in your house, or you don't have heat, or mom and dad is not there, and the person down the street insults you every day, and you feel like you don't know who you are. Like John said, you need to identify, so you pick up that. So as Ike said, to any leader out there, find the resources that you need to come into a community and save our people, because we are traumatized.
John Pace, Shavonne Robbins, I want to give you guys the last word. Shavonne, start with you.
They always say, experience is the best teacher. Ain't nobody more experienced than me and John. We did it years, and like you said, we here, we willing to talk, we willing to reach out, we willing to be them boots on the, the ground or whatever. People reach out to us, we reach out back. We don't mind helping nobody. The youth, and some of the adults need some help too. So, we here to help anybody, and I want to thank y'all for having me today.
Our pleasure. John?
Yeah. So I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here and to be able to share my story, because I understand that it is important, and I believe that I have a responsibility to be able to share my story. And so I also understand that these issues are real. Lately I've been looking at it's a TEDx piece by this woman. Her name is Burke. I don't remember her first name, but she talked about adverse childhood experience and how these are real issues. These are public health issues, and they play a role with children. And so I'm studying, me and Juwan, about how can I, better understand how can I be able to contribute to young people, and knowing that these are factors, and so I'm available, to be able to assist any way that I can possibly assist. And I can speak for many of the men and women who are coming out. They are also available, and they willing and want to be able to contribute in some kind of way. And so, get in touch.
Absolutely. It's 8:42. You're listening to Wake Up the Word. Our guest for that segment was Shavonne Robbins and John Pace, who were both sentenced to life as juveniles. They were gracious enough to share their story with us this morning on how they ended up incarcerated and offer solutions to violence. Coming up after this commercial break, we'll talk with Sheila Armstrong, who is an organizer with power and an education advocate, and we'll discuss the nominating committee for the school board. It's 8:42. You're listening to Wake Up the Word. I'm Flood the Drummer. We'll be right back.